people say that mass immigration into the United States can help reduce world poverty. Is that true? Well, no, it's not. And let me show you why. This gumball represents the 1 million legal immigrants that the United States has taken every year on average since 1990. Now, who in the world deserves our humanitarian compassion? The World Bank has one measure of the desperately poor of the world. They make less than $2 a day. How many people make less than $2 a day in the world? We'll start with Africa. In Africa alone, there are 650 million people who make less than $2 a day. 650 million. And in India, another 890 million people, desperately poor. China adds another 480 million people, making less than $2 a day. And unfortunately, the rest of Asia has a heartbreaking 810 million people who the World Bank says make less than $2 a day. And finally, there's 105 million of Latin America's population that are desperately poor. All told, the World Bank says there are 3 billion people in the world. 3 billion people who are desperately poor, making less than $2 a day. That's 3,000 gumballs. And every year, we take a million and suggest that we've somehow made a humanitarian difference. Of course, we don't pull our immigrants from these desperately poor populations, do we? These people are too poor, too sick, too disconnected to make it here as immigrants. We tend to pull our immigrants out of the better off poor of the world. And Mexico tends to define the type of immigrant that we bring here because the plurality of people come from Mexico. And Mexico is poor. How many people in the world live in countries that have average incomes lower than that of Mexico? And the World Bank tells us that that number is these 3 billion plus another 2.6 billion people. 5.6 billion people in the world who live in countries with average incomes below that of Mexico. That's 5,600 gumballs. And so what is it that the elites are telling us? They're telling us that when we take this 1 million immigrants, that we somehow or another are tackling world poverty. And we have to do it regardless of the effect on our unemployed, the working poor, the most vulnerable members of our society, regardless of the effect on our natural resources. Even if we went by the most radical proposals in Washington, which are to actually double our immigration to 2 million a year, which would totally overwhelm our physical, natural, and social infrastructures, we couldn't make a noticeable difference. And we may be really hurting the impoverished people of the world because the million that we do take are among the most energetic, often the better educated, certainly the most dissatisfied people that if they did not immigrate would be the agents for change to improve the lot of all the people in these countries. The true heroes in the global humanitarian field are the people in these countries who have the wherewithal to immigrate to another country, but instead stay in their countries to apply their skills to help their fellow countrymen. Unfortunately, our immigration system tends to entice these very type of people to abandon their countrymen.
That is so true.
The impossibility of making even a dent is actually worse than it looks here. Because last year, when we took 1 million immigrants, these countries added, births over deaths, 80 million more people into the impoverished population. And this year, Congress is bringing in 1 million legal immigrants. And this year, according to the United Nations, these countries are expected to add another 80 million people. And next year, you can be quite sure that Congress, unless stopped by the American voters, will bring in another 1 million immigrants. And these countries, unfortunately, will be adding another 80 million people into these impoverished nations. take 5 million a year. But we never get ahead of what's happening in these countries. Not in this century. Don't you see? Immigration can never be an effective or significant way to deal with the suffering of people of the world. They have to be helped where they live. 99.9% of them will never be able to immigrate to a rich country. There's no hope for that. They have to bloom where they're planted. The only place that 99.9% of these people can be helped is where they live. Let's help them there.
That is so true. That is so true. You know, I felt like that when I was younger. One of the reasons why I migrated to the United States is, well, there was none to lack of opportunity in the Philippines for me. I would have to compete with very educated people, very smart people. And so I came here, which I'm glad I did. But I wish I could have stayed back there in my culture, with my friends and family. Don't get me wrong, I'm grateful to migrate into the United States. I would have never in a million years have what I have now if I stayed back home in the Philippines. Which brings me the question, why is America the way it is? Why is America proportionally successful than most countries in the world? What is it in the United States that makes this country successful? Is it the resources? A lot of countries around the world have the same resources. Is it brain power? Man, look at India. They're really, really smart people. Is it? What is it? What differentiates the America, the United States, from the rest of the world? It's not resources, right? Is it the government? Is it our Constitution? Is it the I mean, look at most of the countries in the Middle East. They've got oils. They're swimming in oils. They're very, very rich countries, like Saudi, Iraq, and yet they are not just as successful as the United States. So I believe that instead of migrating those people here and leaving their families there, and it's so true. I see that in the Philippines. Most Filipinos that migrate into the United States are not the poorest people. They're the educated, the businessmen, the doctors, the nurses. And that's why the poor gets poorer, because they don't have the resources. So why don't we bring the system here in the United States to the country that really needs help, like Africa? I think one of the biggest problem in Africa is, look, I'm just saying this on my own guesses, but I think one of the biggest problems around the world, or in Africa, or anywhere in the world, when it comes to poverty, is corruption. Utter corruption. Look at the Philippines. Philippines could be the richest country in Asia. It was once called the Pearl of the Orient. Philippines is not a poor country, but due to corruption of the government and the system, it has become one of the poorest people in Asia. Probably is the poorest people. And I've never seen that analogy as what I heard. And that is so true. Stop taking the educated, the middle class out of that country. Let them stay there so they can help, they can lead. Instead of migrating people here and breaking up families to wherever they're from, help them where they are. That is so true. That is one powerful, incredible analogy I just heard. I really believe that the biggest problems in any country that are poor are the corruptions of the government. I'm not sure how true it is. I'm not really sure, okay? But from what I heard back in 1990s, someone told me that New Zealand is managed by not New Zealanders. Their government or their finances are managed by outsiders, as if they can't balance their own checkbook per se. I don't know how true that is, but I heard that somewhat. Be glad if somebody could confirm that or not. Look at me, for example. I haven't been home in the Philippines for almost 16, 17 years. A lot of people that I have known back in the island are mostly dead. New generations are springing up that I have never met. But you know, we all know it's not going to work. It'll never happen. we'll catch you guys later. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, share, comment, and let me know your thoughts. Peace.